Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Welcome everybody to the Séance ordinaire du Conseil municipal de la ville de Westmount, lundi le 7 mars 2022. Thank you for joining us this evening. Mayor Christina Smith is away on spring break with her family, and I have the honor of serving as acting mayor in her absence and chairing tonight's proceedings. Firstly, I wish all our Westmounters on spring break or finished spring break, I hope it's been safe and well for everybody, and wishing you a good spring break. Ladies and gentlemen, members of council, the past 2 weeks or so have been frightening for all of us as we have witnessed Russia's unwarranted and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. We've all been horrified as Putin's forces have cut off energy, food supplies, attacked nuclear installations, bombarded civilians, spread falsehoods. Domestically, Putin has shut down the opposition, closing media outlets who have the courage to call what's happening in Ukraine a war rather than a special military operation. He apparently has now threatened Russians with a curfew and martial law. Yet despite the dangers, we've seen thousands of Russians take to the streets. And of course, we've all watched in awe the courage of the Ukrainian people as they, at great personal risk, have stood up for democracy and for their independence. I personally was moved on Saturday night to tears as I listened to the Ukrainian-Canadian choir sing the Ukrainian and Canadian national anthems before the Habs game in Edmonton on Saturday night. They sang in Ukrainian, English, and in French. And we as Westmounters stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. I believe I speak on behalf of all council members, and I know the mayor, not being here, agrees, in support for the stand taken by the Canadian government and by nations around the world. We also urge our fellow Westmounters to donate to causes dedicated to helping the Ukrainian people, like the Canadian Red Cross, the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, UNICEF Canada, the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, Care Canada, Save the Children. And of course, I heard today on the radio, there are many Canadians booking Airbnbs in Ukraine and sending the money to local folks to help them. The situation in Ukraine reminds us of how fortunate we are to live in Westmount, Quebec, and Canada. Council meetings like the one we're holding tonight are at the heart of our democracy. We on council are privileged to have the opportunity to serve, and the citizens are fortunate to have the right to come forward to share their views. A respectful and civilized debate is critical to building a better Westmount, a better Quebec, and a better Canada, and ensuring we effectively meet the needs of our residents. In looking ahead, I encourage all of us to become more engaged on the debate about what type of Quebec we want to build together. I think I speak for all of us on council in saying we were very disappointed to hear our premier defend the cancellation of the Dawson College project because priority has to be given to French CEGEPs. Firstly, Dawson takes pride in the diversity of its student population. And secondly, we're all Quebecers. Bill 96, which is currently being debated at l'Assemblée nationale, will have a far-reaching impact on the lives of Quebecers. In the name of promoting the use of French, it preemptively uses the notwithstanding clause to override the Quebec and Canadian Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. It touches, of course, on commerce, employment, education, access to public services, health, expression in a range of contexts. Please consult the brief submitted by the Association of Suburban Mayors to learn about the position taken by the City of Westmount, particularly in relation to the provision of municipal services. Also this evening, I know Mayor Smith and all the councillors join me in paying tribute to an outstanding public servant who passed away recently. The Honorable Donald Johnson served as our Member of Parliament from 1978 to 1988. He was a cabinet minister under Pierre Trudeau and John Turner, and he was president of the Liberal Party. He then became the first non-European head of the OECD, where he helped develop standards of corporate social responsibility. He called for an end to harmful tax practices and helped establish metrics to compare international education. Don was a friend of mine. In fact, he mentored me and encouraged me to run for city council. He loved policy and he loved politics, and he was always looking for a way to make a difference. We'd often talk politics at Chez Nick, But what impressed me most about Don was his love of life, his sense of humor, and his humanity. He was a remarkable man who will be sorely missed. We offer our condolences to his wife, Heather, and their four children. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the good news. It's probably the first time in a few years where our response to the pandemic does not form the heart of the mayor's opening remarks. While we encourage all Westmounters to be vigilant, we welcome the easing of public health measures. Our city staff are gradually returning to the office. Our programs and services are ramping up. It's been a challenging 2 years for everybody, and we should take pride in our community, in the city of Westmount, as demonstrated by Westmounters throughout how they've been incredible throughout the pandemic. Your willingness to help your neighbor is what makes our community special. And one last shout out, the pandemic has been hard on our local businesses. Please shop locally wherever you can. Thank you. And now let's proceed with our rather full agenda. I'll ask councillors for the councillors' reports. Councillor D'Amico.
So I'd like to address the most frequently asked questions that I get in District 1. So what's happening with the Summit Lookout? So we went to tender last year. We did not have any bidders, so we're trying again this year. Number 2, the Roslyn Lookout, same answer. And I should have some concrete answers for the one-way Sunnyside next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Roux.
Yes, I'd like to talk about the library as usual. So library came out with these beautiful tote bags, which I hope to see all around Westmount. You'll be happy to know that they're bilingue, so both languages. And they will be selling them at the library for $12. You can give them away. You can buy them for yourselves. Also, the book sale, after 2 years of not taking place, will be taking place again on the 9th and 10th of April at Victoria Hall. There's going to be lots of books because they've got 2020 and 2021 piled up. If any of you are thinking of donating books for the sale, please hold on till after the sale because there's so many books right now, they don't have any room to take anything else in. So they'll be happy once they've cleared out everything with the sale to start gathering for the following year. I think that's about it.
Sorry, I forgot one very important thing. Just for affected residents, there will be an information session on Thursday at 5 p.m. Regarding the Lexington reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Amico. Thank you, Councillor Roux. Councillor Peart, no comments. Councillor Bostock.
Good evening, everybody. Well, if you haven't already figured it out, it is pothole season. Just to remind you that this does actually happen every year. Unfortunately, with the weather that we have, with the freeze and then the defrost and then the rain and all of the heavy traffic and machinery, unfortunately, we get big potholes everywhere. This is your opportunity to report a pothole. You just go onto our website, you report the pothole, and I can assure you that a crew is going to be out there diligently filling them as the weather permits. And just a quick moment to thank our public works teams for all of their hard work. We've had a lot of really random weather in the last few weeks, a lot of snowfalls, some rain, and those changing weather conditions really means that they have to be out there working to ensure the safest possible environment for our residents. So I just want to give them a quick shout out for all their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallery.
Thank you, Councillor Shammy. Just a quick update to let you all know that our spring registration for our sports and recreation program will take place on Tuesday, March 15th. So next week, 8 a.m. It's an online registration only. And 2 weeks later, that's for residents. It'll be followed by the non-resident registration on March 29th. I'd also like to let you all know that the winter activities have been extended 3 weeks and will continue until April 23rd, at which time we'll move right into the spring activities on Monday, April 25th. And the Sports and Rec Department have moved to online registration that will take place now 4 times a year instead of 2 times a year. So we'll be signing up for each specific season. So I think it's a great move so families can plan the activities that make sense for the individuals that are interested. And it'll keep us on the ball to monitor each season as they come. So that's it for me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aronson, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't have a huge report for today. What we have is I've been doing a lot of meetings. I wanted to thank our Director General, Mr. Hakim, for making it possible for me and a number of other administrators within the city to meet with an expert in communication strategy. We are working hard in making sure that we further develop our communication strategies and tools for our hardworking city employees, make sure that everything that they need to communicate to the citizens is clear, concise, and available. And we'll have more developments with that as they come. The coming 2 weeks, I'll be meeting with both the Merchants Association for Green Avenue and for Victoria Village as we begin to plan summer activities. Economic development is a very, very important profile or portfolio at this time, as so many of our local businesses have been suffering through the pandemic. And as we are able to get back out and mingle, we want to make sure there's a lot of interesting activities happening in our commercial sectors to draw people back out and remind us all why it is so wonderful to live within this community in terms of the available resources we have. And thirdly, we continue, and we're going to talk a little bit about this more as we answer citizen questions. We're continuing to develop our strategies around climate crisis and sustainability policy. It is an ongoing process that we work at pretty consistently because it's a pretty big task, and we're seeing some progress here. I will get into that a little bit more as we answer questions. That's all for me from District 7. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Kess.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm sure you're all aware, but I just want to bring to your attention the grandparent fraud scheme that is taking place, where fraudsters are frequently use the phone to scam seniors. And I just want to bring to your attention that on our city website, we have information in the news section, the news information notice on what to do, how to react, phone numbers to call. If you get these calls, it tells you who to call, Station 12, or to call the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. So give a look to the website because it does provide some useful information. And another note, which I always talking about, well, seems so lately, I was surprised to see that between February 28th and the 6th of March, we had 40 vehicles towed. So again, I cannot stress enough that pay attention to those orange signs, because if you pay attention, everything will be much more efficient. So please, please don't get your car towed. Pay attention to those orange signs. And that's my update.
Thank you, Councillor. Merci pour les rapports des conseillers. Maintenant, we'll move to the première période de questions. First question period. Do we have any questions that have come in, Monsieur Ferland?
Oui, nous avons eu plusieurs questions, Monsieur le maire suppléant. La première nous vient de Monsieur Daniel Lambert. Alors, each successive scientific report on climate change predicts every worsening outcomes because of slow action to reduce GHG emissions. The February 28 Intergovernmental Climate Change Report has continued that trend. Given the importance of and urgency of climate change, we ask that the Commissioner for Climate provide brief monthly updates on actions and activities by Westmount toward reducing GHG. While mitigation measures will be necessary, prevention measures will reduce the impact on everyone. We appreciate the updates by councillors on a range of issues at the start of council meetings and feel that climate change action merit at least monthly updates.
Merci, Maître Ferland. Thank you, Mr. Lambert, for a very important question. And you raise some important issues. If I may, Commissioner Aronson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, Mr. Lambert, yes. Yes, I can give you monthly updates. Yes, I'd be pleased to give you monthly updates. I would be happy to talk to you about this as much as you are willing to listen, because I am very excited about the really great work that we've been undertaking and that we will continue to undertake for the city to be able to meet its obligations, as we all have, to mitigate and to prepare for the incoming climate crisis. I will commit absolutely to a monthly update, and where possible, I'll try to do one at every public council meeting. Thank you for your question and for being proactive on this file.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland, deuxième question.
Deuxième question de Monsieur Denis Biro, pardon. 2 years ago, in the Imagine Westmount survey, residents were asked a question on the importance of the city's greenhouse gas reduction targets. 91% agreed, saying that it was very important or important. They added that as a wealthy community, we can be a leader in the fight against climate change. The first step in any meaningful climate action, including the development of policies and plans, is for a city to appoint someone in charge. Does Westmount currently have anyone at a senior level responsible for integrating environmental decisions into the city plans? If not, will the city set up this position, and when? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biro, for your very important question. And yes, you raise some very compelling statistics. I'd like to reach out perhaps to Commissioner D'Amico. Might comment on some of the green.
Yes. So the finance department has invited an outside consultant to guide the finance department. This requires coordination amongst departments. So we are working on that to provide the data and the numbers to implement what we call the green accounting. So we are working on that. That will take some time to structure the coordination among departments, but that is something that we'll be working on. It's teamwork, so we'll be working across the departments, and we'll be acting also as a support to the climate change commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner D'Amico, and perhaps Commissioner Aronson on climate change.
Indeed. Just to address Mr. Biro's excellent suggestion of having a point person within the administration to handle climate change. We're not quite there yet. The most important thing about the policy that we're developing to respond to the climate crisis is that we think this through and do it properly, as opposed to trying to throw a lot of things at the wall. We don't have the time to make mistakes. And so at the moment, I am the point person who is pushing from within the council this agenda forward with the assistance of all the councillors that you see before you today, as well as our city administration. We will certainly take under advisement the idea that there ought to be a director or assistant director specifically tasked with the implementation of climate policy, but that, along with all of the other climate crisis sustainability and sustainability policies, will be decided upon and made public in the fullness of time. Like I say, we don't want to run the risk of rushing this and making a big mistake. So we are acting prudently, but with haste. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland, la troisième question.
Yes, it's another question from Mr. Biro. The UN climate report released last week warned again of a state of emergency. Every city must do its part. One basic way is by building environmental requirements into municipal tender proposals. At a council a month ago, I asked a question prompted by a CBC investigation into the operation of Rivoca, the company doing Westmount's recycling, but allegedly also polluting. While no answer was provided then, I was left with the impression that I would receive a response in writing. To date, I've received no answer. Today, I'm asking exactly the same question. As climate is now critical, Do all city contracts with any supplier now contain a clause to require the supplier to affirm that it meets the applicable environmental regulations?
Merci. I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Mr. Biro, for your question. And yes, the administration is working to get you your answer and to get back to you. And they will be reaching out to you. Perhaps Councillor Aronson wanted to add?
Well, I did want to make note that, the most important thing about getting you an answer is getting you the right answer. The second most important thing is getting it to you quickly. So we do appreciate you coming back and asking again to ensure that it doesn't fall off the agenda or a bit misplaced or not properly addressed. But Mr. Bureau, we do take this seriously, and of course there is a lot of work involved in checking every city contract to make sure that every single one of them is compliant. But as a general policy, it certainly would be the case that first of all we would expect all of our contractors to obey the law. I mean, that doesn't need to be in a contract. That's basic law. But secondly, as a policy going forward, if we find that there is a lacuna or areas in which contracts do not specifically require our contractors to undertake certain procedures to protect or improve the environment, it is something that I would certainly be pushing for inclusion in any standard form contract. Again, all in due time. I do appreciate your patience as we work through this properly. And I'm sure that a member of the administration will get back to you with the specific answer to your question in short order. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Maître Ferland, la prochaine question.
Nous avons deux questions de Nigel Goddard. Première question. As there have been more than a few water main leaks in the past few months affecting District 7, including the one that flooded 5 houses on Irvine, what steps has the Council taken to minimize this happening again to others throughout the city?
If I may begin, Mr. Goddard, thank you for both your questions, but your first question about the water breaks. You know, we are living in unprecedented times, from -28 on Thursday to 10 degrees yesterday. I heard today in the South Shore, a huge main broke, especially in our city of 150 years old. The infrastructure, our pipes, they're fragile, and these weather changes need the vigilance. We need the care. You raise very good questions. Yes, our administration, our public works is working diligently to make sure we mitigate these occurrences from happening, and we'll take it under advisement. We'll make sure we continue to reach out and look and see what we can do to assist in all areas. But you know, these acts of
it would appear as though the Mayor Pro Tem is somewhat frozen.
Breakage, and it's important that we do our best. Councillor Aronson?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Goddard, we know that this is an issue that's very dear to your heart and to the heart of all of the residents living in areas where, unfortunately, the water mains are of a certain age. As you can imagine, when we have a city with over 50 kilometers of water mains, as well as all of the other subterranean infrastructure, all of which is aging at the same time, we must, unfortunately, plan our work and carry it out in a professional and diligent fashion. Regardless of how we do it, some street somewhere in Westmount is going to be last. And unfortunately, that does run the risk that there may, before we can get to it and completely rebuild the street and the infrastructure below it, we may have an unfortunate incident like the one that happened on your street. There's nobody on this council who doesn't feel deeply that the safety and health and welfare of our citizens is of the utmost importance. None of us want to see a basement flooded, or someone have to go without water, or have a boil water advisory. We are doing everything in our power using the 5-year plan that was put in place, I believe in 2018, to carry through with the plans to develop or to rebuild each and every substreet in due time, in a manner that is not only to the highest professional standard, but also planned and executed with the costs and expenses and resource limitations of available staff in mind. And so let me put your mind at ease when I say that yes, this council is taking steps to make sure that we do not have unnecessary flooding or water main breaks. And where one occurs before our public works folks can get to fixing the problem permanently, they will immediately address it and minimize or mitigate any damages that may occur. We wish that we have the power to fix every street and every pipe instantaneously and simultaneously. Unfortunately, that simply isn't reality. And so we thank you for your concern, for continuing to advocate for this issue, and for your patience as we do the work that needs to be done for the benefit of all of us in Westmount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland, la deuxième question de Monsieur Goddard.
I witnessed a woman have a serious fall walking her dog down an unsalted sidewalk on Lansdowne Avenue below Côte Saint-Antoine after a recent snow and ice storm. What will the Council do to make the sidewalks on our hills safer for pedestrians?
Thank you, Mr. Goddard, for that question. Of course, we empathize with that woman who had a fall. You know, words can't describe someone falling and hurting themselves. We do our utmost. I know Public Works works diligently to keep our roads safe. The change in temperature, the change in weather conditions, snow, water, ice, sleet, freezing rain. I mean, we've experienced it all this year and this time this year, and we know how difficult it is. Council takes very seriously. We will again speak, of course, with our colleagues at Public Works to make sure we reach out. And again, thank you for your concern. Anyone on Councillor Bostock on Public Works?
I would just say that we do salt and do put out grit on all of our roads, and Lansdowne in particular gets special attention. But one of the things that has to be taken into consideration is runoff from the gardens and from walkways at people's houses. And often on a steep hill like that, if it's a mild day, the water will run down the sidewalk even after the bombardier has passed by. And unfortunately, you know, we could pass by 100 times a day, and things like this unfortunately still do happen. But I can assure you that our Public Works Department does everything they can to mitigate risk.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland, la dernière question.
Nous avons trois autres questions de la même personne, Mme Caroline John Doll. Deux questions écrites que nous avons reçues aujourd'hui. Mme John Doll est actuellement en ligne, elle lève la main. Alors, je vais commencer par les questions écrites. Westmount City Council has made a commitment since the last municipal election to prioritize decarbonization with an approach that is both active and encompasses activity in all its departments and services, from capital and public works to urban planning. This is the focus of my ongoing concern and question that I raise today. To what regard will respect to the specifics is this being heeded? Question: I have these exact environmental costs being rigorously accounted for over the past year. If this is not the case, what has brought about the delay in acting on this?
Thank you, Madame Jondal, for your very important question. And your eloquence as an advocate in this area is second to none. You've been raising these questions, rightly so, very, very vital questions to us. If I can reach out to Councillor Aronson and Councillor D'Amico on these issues, if they would like to chime in.
Yes, so when you have a problem, the first thing you need to do is obviously is to quantify the problem. So we are working on that. Like I previously stated, we brought in an outside person to guide finance This is work that requires coordination amongst departments, but we are starting to look at that and put that in place. Naturally, it's something new. The only city that's doing that so far is the city of Montreal. So this is something new, but we are working on it, and it is a priority for us. So it will get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aronson.
Thank you. Chandel, I must reiterate the comments of my colleague that you have been one of the forefront, the primary torchbearers of this particular issue for long before I was paying attention to what City Council is doing. And for that, I thank you for your longstanding commitment and concern on this issue. I'm gratified to be able to report to you that we are now in the planning process of trying to bring the most easily achievable quick actions that we can take for immediate change in the near term. So as our policy takes shape, we'll be able to provide more and more information as to precisely what it is that the City of Westmount is going to do to minimize greenhouse emissions across all of our activities, as well as citizen activities. But to do it properly, mirroring what Councillor D'Amico has said, we have to make sure that we fully understand the scope of the project or the problem from a policy perspective and all of the various different impacts it'll have on city operations before we start changing or doing anything that's going to significantly disrupt the core business that we provide. In a meeting earlier this week with the mayor and our director general, I made the analogy that coming up with a comprehensive climate crisis policy is a little bit like trying to rebuild an airplane while flying. We cannot stop every city activity in order to retool. And so we have to simultaneously carry out the work that has always been done by municipal governments at the same time as completely redesigning it. It is challenging. It's difficult, but incredibly gratifying work. And I'm very, very happy that going forward, each and every time we set or achieve a milestone, I'll be able to report to you the specifics of exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we think it's going to help. And so, as I'm afraid I have to ask you to be a little bit more patient, as I do not have a laundry list of available answers to you at this moment. But I can say that we're going to do everything in our power to try to bring this city up to its normal standards of professionalism, diligence, and respect for its citizenry and for its tradition of being a leader in any field that it decides to take on as a hallmark of this city's ability to achieve great things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
Donc, une autre question écrite de Mme Jandal et ensuite, je pourrais lui donner la parole pour qu'elle pose sa dernière question. Alors, environmental agencies have affirmed that the snow clearing emits as much CO2 as driving 1,000 kilometers in a vehicle. Two machines most frequently purchased and employed by Westmount are the tractors of various sizes and the snow blowers. Have the exact environmental costs been rigorously accounted for over the past year? If this is not the case, what has brought about the delay in acting on this?
Thank you, Madame Jandal, again. Again, it's a very important question. And, you know, we need innovation to help. The world needs innovation to look at how we do our daily tasks. Councillor Aronson, do you want to chime in on this equipment question?
Well, at the risk of going on and on and on and on and on and on, as I want to do, as you know, let me say this. As we move forward with a climate crisis policy, we are obviously always looking to replace our equipment with something that reduces or eliminates greenhouse gases altogether. But like I said about flying the plane while or rebuilding the plane while flying it, despite the fact that we are very well aware that snow clearing operations do contribute to greenhouse gases, we have an obligation to clear the snow anyway. So we've got to work on an alternative at the very same time that we are going to have to continue to carry out activities which are not optimal from the point of view of reducing or eliminating greenhouse gases until such time as the technology is available and in our hands to switch from something that is greenhouse gas emitting to something that is either neutral or actually reduces greenhouse gases. We're aware of the problem, of course, but the solution is not as obvious as it may seem, and that's where our work lies.
Thank you, Councillor. Maître Ferland. Peut-être Madame Jondal veut poser. Madame Jondal, do you want to ask a question in person?
So now she's allowed to talk.
Neat. Thank you for this opportunity. It really just is an observation that we can actually begin in different ways. We approach problems in different ways, and that quantifiable research that I read and transmitted to you is pretty shocking, actually. But unfortunately, I have a front row seat. I live on St. Catherine Street in an apartment block, and absolutely frequently, sometimes twice a day, the machines go by as early as 4:30 in the morning. They don't just pass once. I realize they're fanning out. But what I've observed is that it's almost as though, and it's not that I want anyone slipping, goodness, no. At the same time, they are so incredibly excessive in scraping. I have to wonder if there's a sidewalk left. I have to go down and check to see if they've really created a hole to the Middle Earth. Seriously, this is not an exaggeration. They are so diligent. They are. When I first came in the fall to City Council to report on that, I think January evening a few years ago, and there was one excessively noisy small machine that was told to get rid of that ice on Sherbrooke Street right in front of the building. And when I spoke to the young fellow, I said, wouldn't it be actually more effective if you got out and a couple of you took picks and just got rid of it? And he agreed.
You raised excellent points. Your supplementary question is concerns.
Supplementary question is, I wonder if you could look at some of the more obvious. I don't think we have to. Do you agree possibly that the excessive activity is perhaps to maintain a reputation that Westmount wishes to have, and it's not quite as expedient as it needs to be or effective as it needs to be? That's my question. It's really rhetoric.
It's a very good question. Do I have some of the commissioners want to chime in here? Perhaps Commissioner Bostock at Public Works. I mean, or Commissioner Aronson in Climate and Sustainability. Any comments?
From a Public Works perspective, our population in Westmount is a senior population. We have the largest senior population per capita. And we have a lot of mobile seniors in our community. And yes, the expectation to have clear sidewalks and safe spaces for them to walk around the neighborhood is very high. And so with respect, as much as I can appreciate the back and forth on your street, at the end of the day, when you come out of your house, you never have to worry about falling on a sidewalk, because you know that the ice has been cleared, it's been salted, there's been grit put down, and also don't forget, we also live on a hill, so we have no choice but to ensure the safe passage of our pedestrians and our cyclists,
our drivers. Councillor Aronson.
Well, the Councillor Bostock got to this right at the end of her excellent point. It is annoying, I agree. And nobody wants to see additional greenhouse gases being emitted by a large tractor trailer that's clearing the ice. But we must take into consideration that we want to encourage pedestrians and cyclists to leave their cars at home and walk. And so if we were to fail to clear the ice and clear it consistently and diligently, I'm afraid that we would have far more seniors have to get into a motor vehicle in order to get to where they need to go, causing more people to put more carbon into the atmosphere. Is it annoying? Absolutely, it's annoying. Is it ideal? No, definitely not. As soon as we can get snow clearing equipment that does not require fossil fuels, I'll be advocating for us to do so. But in the meantime, we have to look at this globally and ask ourselves, what would happen if we didn't clear the ice and snow the way we do now, in terms of how people would choose to get around day to day? I think far more of them would get into cars. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, Madame Jandal, for your questions, and all the questioners this evening for our first question period. I'd like to move now to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor D'Amico. No, you're on. I don't hear you, sir. Sorry. Councillor D'Amico, there we go.
Sorry. Donc, merci, Monsieur le maire suppléant. Donc, je propose que l'ordre du jour de la séance ordinaire du Conseil du 7 mars 2022 soit adopté.
Merci bien. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bostock, Councillor Gallery. Thank you. All those in favor? Perfect. Reports to council. Correspondence. I, as acting mayor, report the following documents from the Montreal Agglomeration Council are now tabled. Draft bylaw P-RCG 14-029-4 entitled Règlement modifiant la schéma de management et de développement de l'agglomération de Montréal, RCJ 14029, and its annexes A and B, as well as resolution CG 220133, adopting said draft bylaw, and draft bylaw P-RCG 14029-5 entitled Règlement modifiant le schéma de management et de développement de l'agglomération de Montréal, RCG 14029, and its annexes A and B, as well as resolution CG 220134, adopting said draft bylaw. And finally, the list of bylaws adopted at the Agglomeration Council meeting of the 24th of February, 2022. Item 6.2, minutes of the General Committee of Council. Conseiller D'Amico.
Donc, je propose que les procès-verbaux des rencontres du comité plénier du Conseil du 20 décembre 2021, 7 février et 9 février 2022 soient déposés et disponibles sur le site web de la Ville.
Merci, conseiller. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor?
Do we?
Number 6.3, Finance and Administration Committee minutes. Again, Conseiller D'Amico.
Je propose que les procès-verbaux des rencontres de la Commission des finances et de l'administration tenues les 29 septembre, 2 décembre, 9 décembre, 15 décembre et 21 décembre 2021 sont déposés.
Merci. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Roux. All those in favor? Carried. 6.4, Transportation Advisory Committee minutes. Conseiller Bostock.
I move that the minutes of the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting held on September 28 and October 8, 2021 are tabled and are available on the city's website.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder and approved. Thank you. Workforce report, Councillor Kez.
The workforce report for the month of January 2020 is tabled.
Thank you, Councillor Kez. The payment registry 6.6, Councillor D'Amico.
Thank you. I propose that the list of payments for the month of January 2022 is tabled.
Thank you, Councillor. 6.7, list of approvals in virtue of bylaw 1507, Councillor Kez.
Conformément au règlement 1507 sur la délégation de pouvoir à certains employés de la ville de Westmount, la liste d'autorisation de dépenses pour le mois de janvier 2022 est déposée.
Merci. 6.8, list of duties on transfer invoices. Conseiller D'Amico.
Je propose que la liste de facturation des Je propose que la liste de facturation des droits de mutation pour le mois de février 2022 est déposée.
Merci. 6.9, the 2021 report for counselors' research and support expenses. Conseiller D'Amico.
Donc, je propose que conformément à la loi sur le traitement des élus municipaux, le rapport des dépenses de recherche et soutien des conseillers pour l'exercice financier 2021 est déposé.
Thank you for tabling that. Item 7, the adoption of council's position on items to be submitted to the Montreal Urban Agglomeration Council. Councillor D'Amico.
Je propose que la mairesse ou en son absence, le maire suppléant sont autorisés à prendre toute décision qu'elle jugera opportune à l'égard des sujets inscrits à l'ordre du jour de la séance du Conseil d'agglomération de Montréal devant se tenir le 24 mars 2022 et ce, dans le meilleur intérêt de la ville de Westmount et de ses résidents.
Thank you. We have a seconder of this motion. Thank you, Councillor Aronson. All those in favor? Carried. Item 8, renewal of the group insurance coverage, La Capitale Civil Service Insurer, Inc. Conseiller D'Amico.
Donc, je propose entendu que la suite d'un appel d'offres visant les services d'assurance collective pour les employés des villes reconstituées de l'île de Montréal, le contrat pour la couverture d'assurance collective des employés, des retraités et des élus de la ville de Westmount a été adjugé à la capitale assureur de l'administration publique, Inc., pour une période maximale de 5 ans, soit du 1er avril 2019 au 31 mars 2024, résolution numéro 2019-05-115, attendu que la capitale assureur de l'administration publique, Inc., est maintenant connue sous le nom de Beneva, attendu qu'une disposition prévoit le renouvellement annuel des polices. Je propose que le renouvellement de la couverture d'assurance collective pour les employés actifs, les retraités et les élus soit autorisé pour la période du 1er avril 2022 au 31 mars 2023. Que le paiement des primes au montant de 741 482, taxes incluses, soit autorisé pour la période s'étalant du 1er avril 2022 au 31 mars 2023. D'autoriser une dépense de 556 112,79 taxes incluses pour l'année fiscale 2022, conformément aux informations financières inscrites au sommaire décisionnel numéro 2022-1494, que le directeur général soit autorisé à signer pour et au nom de la Ville tout document nécessaire ou exigé pour donner suite à la présente résolution.
Merci, conseiller. Do we have appuyeur? Thank you, Councillor Bostock. All those in favor? Carried. Number 9, installation of photo radar system on Route 136. Conseiller Quez.
Whereas the management of Route 136, Highway 720, is the responsibility of the Ministère des Transports du Québec, hereafter MTQ, under the terms of Decree number 292-93 of March 3rd, 1993, and its subsequent amendments. Whereas vehicles often go over 110 kilometers per hour on Route 136, which is significantly higher than the speed limit of 70 kilometers per hour. Whereas residents in the area adjacent to 136 between Atwater and Hallowell Street complain about the noise caused by speeding vehicles. Whereas it is appropriate to request the MTQ to install photo radar on Route 136 to reduce the noise. I move that the City of Westmount request the Ministère des Transports du Québec to install photo radar on 136 to reduce roadway noise between Atwater Avenue and Hallowell Street.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Aronson. All those in favor? Carried. Number 10, numéro 10, negotiations for an agreement with the Ministère des Transports du Québec, MTQ, Selby Park. Councillor Quez.
Whereas in 1972, the City of Westmount created Selby Park on land owned by the Ministère des Transports du Québec, hereafter the MTQ. Whereas from 1972 to 2015, the park was enjoyed and loved by many residents of Westmount. Whereas since 2015, Selby Park has been temporarily closed due to the Turcotte project, whereas the Turcotte project has been completed, whereas the City of Westmount never had an agreement with the MTQ for the use of the land as originally planned, whereas until an agreement is reached with the MTQ, the City of Westmount cannot proceed with landscaping or any other type of project in Selby Park. I move that the City Council authorize the City of Westmount to enter into negotiations for an agreement with the Ministère des Transports du Québec for the acquisition or use of the Selby Park land and use the little parcel of land west of Green Avenue adjacent to Selby Park, that the Director General be mandated to act as a city representative in these negotiations and authorized to sign all documents required to implement this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gallery. All those in favor? Carried. Number 11, appropriation, appropriated surplus. Councillor D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Mayor. Whereas Council wishes to proceed with the project to develop a temporary public space on the Maisonneuve Boulevard to continue the pilot project implemented on December 2021, whereas this initiative was not included in the 2022 budget, whereas an amount of $200,000 was appropriated in 2020 for initiatives to revitalize commercial arteries, Resolution 2020-06-111, whereas of this amount, the balance of $77,023.94 is still available, whereas the appropriated surplus for actuarial deficit of $1.285 million can be reduced, I propose that an amount of $123,000 be appropriated to the appropriated surplus, revitalization of commercial arteries, and that the project to develop a temporary public space on the Maisonneuve Boulevard be financed from this appropriated surplus.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bostock. All those in favor? Its motion is carried. Number 12, tabling of the Planning Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Peart.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Chamy. I move that Council acknowledge and accept the minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on February 22nd of 2022.
Thank you. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Gallery. All those in favor? Considered carried. Thank you. Item 13, is that right? 13. I'm sorry. Urban planning, approval of site planning, architectural integration. Councillor Peart.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Chamy. I move that the Municipal Council act on the opinions of the Planning Advisory Committee, PAC, as set out in the minutes of the meeting held on February 22nd of 2022 minutes, and adopt for each of them the site planning and architectural integration programs conditions for the issuance of a permit as listed in the following items. CCU 22-02-22.05, CCU 22-02-22.07, CCU 22-02-22.08, and CCU 22-02-22.14 of the agenda of the PAC meeting held on February 22nd of 2022.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? I see Councillor Gallery. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving to item 14, new business. Failing that, to the deuxième période de questions, to the second question period. Maître Ferland, est-ce qu'on a des questions?
Aucune question, Monsieur le Maire suppléant.
Aucune question. Merci, Maître Ferland. Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, I would like to adjourn the closing of the sitting. It is 6:28 p.m. Bonne soirée. Good evening, everybody. The meeting is closed.